What's up, Guardians? Profane here. Thanks for checking out the video. Grandmasters have returned in Season of the Wish, one of the most challenging activities that most players will participate in. And if you're a hunter who's been struggling to get through these, then you need to check out this new Night Stalker build. A powerful build that will give you top-notch survivability to outlast the most brutal engagements, along with an onslaught of overpowered combinations that will annihilate everything, turning those Grandmasters into easy mode. And I'm not underselling it, folks. This build has so many ways of dominating a battlefield, because thanks to how we have this Night Stalker subclass set up, along with a few key additions from both our seasonal artifact and some new top-tier weapons, you'll be unstoppable. This Night Stalker build features the Gyrfalcon Hauberk, a well-known S-tier hunter exotic that provides the intrinsic trait called See Me, Feel Me, a marvelous trait that provides void weapons with volatile rounds after coming out of invisibility. Volatile rounds fill enemies with unstable energy, causing them to explode on death, damaging nearby enemies. Weapons with volatile rounds have the ability of stunning barrier champions and piercing most any enemy shield. When you are invisible and perform a finisher, all weapons will receive a 35% non-stacking increase in damage, lasting 6 seconds. When you perform an invisible finisher, you will also be granting you and nearby allies with a reserve overshield that will be activated when casting a class ability. This is the equivalent of any other void shield, providing 40 points of bonus health that lasts 10 seconds. Having a constant source of overshields will not only be crucial towards your survivability, but to your teammates as well. Up until the point of the reserve overshield getting casted, you and allies will gain an increase of 500% to the base cooldown of your class ability. There's so many great benefits to the Gyrfalcon, but the bonus ability energy to teammates creates some useful synergy that will provide more barricades and rifts to be generated by Titans and Warlocks, giving your entire team improved survivability. As I mentioned earlier, this build has some unique benefits thanks to our choice in weaponry and our seasonal artifact, and between those, this Gyrfalcon Hauberk build has evolved to be so much more reliable than it's ever been in previous seasons. With that said, let's take a look at one of the exotic weapons that's included in this build. The Buried Bloodline and the Dragon's Breath are both amazing exotics. Both came out this season and both provide great benefits to this build. But these aren't the new exotics that I'm referring to. The Wishkeeper is a new Strand exotic bow that came out this week, and it provides you with the ability to set a Strand trap that suspends targets. This benefit carries over into any subclass, and when it's combined with the Night Stalker Hunter, some extremely powerful synergy is created, because not only will you be able to weaken and tether enemies, but you'll be able to suspend them, trapping them in place, making any trapped enemy, including champions and tormentors, an easy target for us to finish or use overpowered volatile rounds against. Once you've acquired Wishkeeper's Catalyst, you'll even have options of Vorpal to give this weapon bonus damage against bosses and champions, or hatchlings to create threadlings. This incredible combination of suspensions, weakening effects, and tether will allow us to maintain complete control of every encounter, making any engagement in Grandmasters, dungeons, or raids much easier. Before we dive into the other weapons that complete this overpowered onslaught, let's take a look at our seasonal artifact. There are quite a few solar-focused mods this season, but we also have some Strand ones that will synergize really well with the Wishkeeper and our goal of taking enemies out of combat. We start with Unraveling Orbs, which grants Strand weapons Unraveling Rounds when picking up an orb. Unraveling rounds can pierce barrier shields, and they cause tiny strand threads to project out of enemies, causing additional damage over time. Since Unraveling counts as a Strand debuff, this will mean the Wishkeeper will be able to create tangles, giving us another weapon to use against enemies. And with Horde Shuttle, when we damage unraveled targets, threadlings have a chance of being generated, causing additional damage to any nearby enemy. We're also using Dragon's Bite, so whenever we break an enemy's shield with a Strand weapon, that enemy has a chance of becoming instantly suspended. We also have Wished into Being. This causes additional orbs to be generated when we are close to having our super energy full. Orbs are going to give Wishkeeper unraveling rounds, and they'll provide a number of other benefits that we'll be talking about here soon. Not to get too deep into our weapon choices just yet, but our main choice in heavy with this build is a Void heavy machine gun, preferably the Retrofit Escapade, or maybe the Commemoration from Deepstone Crypt. This guarantees that we'll always have a powerful weapon to pierce barrier shields with whenever we have volatile rounds, no matter what our choice in energy or kinetic weapons is. But this season includes Blast Radius, Overload Rocket Launchers, and Argent Ordnance, 3 mods that really push the use of rockets. We'll create armor charges with Rocket Launcher Final Blows, rockets will stun Overload champions, and they'll deal 15% bonus damage when we have armor charges active. It's hard to pass up on those benefits, which is why as our swing option in heavy, we have the Braytech Osprey with Bipod and Envious Assassin. This is going to give us a lot of volatile rockets that are going to decimate waves of enemies, and will either pierce barrier shields or stun Overload champions. And with Stunning Recovery also active on the Osprey, we'll get improved health recovery and a partial reload of our magazine whenever we stun champions. And the last artifact mod that I want to point out is From Whence You Came. There's a lot of Scorn and Taken enemies that will pop up in each of this season's Grandmasters, so having an extra 5% ability damage against these enemies will really come in handy. And that 5% bonus ability damage is also going to get applied to those Tangles and Threadlings. Alright, now that we've addressed the seasonal artifact and the benefits that the Wishkeeper and Gyrfalcon will bring to the table, let's take a look at our class tree. We're using Trapper's Ambush, which gives us the Quick Fall Ground Slam ability. This creates a smoke cloud that weakens enemies and makes you and nearby allies invisible. Most rank and file enemies will be close to the point of being finished after performing the Quick Fall, so this works perfectly towards triggering Gyrfalcon's damage bonus and overshield. This aspect also gives our smoke bombs the ability to make you and nearby allies invisible, which is an irreplaceable benefit in a lot of Grandmaster situations. We're using Vanishing Step, so whenever we perform a dodge, we will become invisible. When it comes to our dodge, I really like Gamblers, because it gives us melee energy back when performed near enemies. But since we want to optimize our time with bonus damage and volatile rounds, we are using Marksman, so that dodging will automatically reload our weapon. And when it comes to our grenade choice, Vortex is my preferred option. But when there are overloads in the mix, I like using suppression grenades, so we have an extra opportunity to stun those champions. You'll just want to watch out performing quick falls with suppression grenades, because the suppression can affect you as well. As far as fragments go, we're using Echo of Leeching, so enemies who are defeated by our quick fall and any other melee attack will trigger our health regeneration, both for us and nearby allies. We're also using Echo of Starvation. You can expect to create a lot of orbs with this build, and with this fragment, whenever we collect an orb or a Void Breach, Devour will get activated. When Devour is active, any final blow is going to grant grenade energy and provide us with 100 points of health. We're also using Echo of Cessation. Whenever we perform a finisher, a burst of energy will be created that causes nearby enemies to become volatile, and by defeating volatile targets, we'll create Void Breaches. Intrinsically, Void Breaches provide 12.5% class ability energy, and one can be created every 5 seconds, so this will be a great way to maintain our dodge energy and Devour. And finally, we are using Echo of Obscurity, which is going to grant invisibility whenever we perform a finisher, giving us 3 total opportunities to become invisible, so that way we can trigger the benefits of Gyrfalcons much more often. With our class tree now addressed, let's talk about how we're going to make this build stronger with the right complement of armor mods. Since orbs are going to give Wishkeeper unraveling rounds, and they'll grant Devour, we want to generate orbs as often as possible. So we're using Harmonic Siphon, Heavy-Handed, and Reaper mods, and keep in mind that Wished into Being will also help generate additional orbs whenever our super is almost full. We're also using Heavy Ammo Finder and Scout on our helmets, so that way we'll generate more heavy ammo for us and allies. And since we're using an exotic primary, we will naturally generate extra heavy ammo. On our gloves, we're using Focusing Strike, which is going to grant class ability energy whenever we strike enemies with our Quick Fall. On our chest, we're using resistance mods to match Grandmaster modifiers. And on our boots, we're using Recuperation so that we get an extra bit of health whenever collecting orbs. We've also got Insulation, so we'll gain class ability energy when collecting orbs. And we're using Absolution, so when we collect orbs, we'll get a small amount of energy to each ability. And we're using the Outreach mod on our class item, so that when we perform a dodge near enemies, we'll gain a small amount of melee energy in return, making up for the fact that we're not using Gambler's Dodge. We're also using Utility Kickstart, so that way when we perform a dodge with armor charges active, those armor charges will be converted to give us as much as 33% class ability energy, allowing us to automatically reload our weapons and go invisible much more often. And speaking of weapons, since we've already covered our heavy and exotic choices, let's go ahead and talk about our choice in energy weapons. The type of champions that you'll be facing in each Grandmaster will call for a different energy weapon. We can suspend barrier and unstoppables with Wishkeeper suspensions. Void weapons that aren't assigned to a champion already will be able to pierce barrier shields when volatile. The Wishkeeper can also pierce barrier shields with unraveling rounds, or it can stun unstoppables with the Unstoppable Bow artifact mod. And when we add the Word of Crota and Unstoppable Hand Cannon mod, we'll have a secondary option to stun unstoppable champions. The Word of Crota, in my opinion, is one of the best PvE hand cannons right now. With destabilizing rounds, you can make targets volatile, and with Repulsor Brace, you can have a secondary Void Overshield. And since Word of Crota comes with the Cursed Thrall origin trait, whenever we defeat enemies with our melee, including our Quickfall, the Word of Crota will cause dragonfly-like explosions on final blows, giving this weapon a lot more bang for the buck. And when we're not using the Word of Crota, we are using another raid weapon, the Age-Old Bond Auto Rifle. This has the optional benefit of stunning Overload champions this season, and it too can drop with destabilizing rounds and Repulsor Brace. If you've been fortunate enough to get it to drop this season, the new Ross Arago Auto Rifle has been performing very well, and it would make a great alternative in Auto Rifle, especially with the added benefit of the Onslaught weapon trait. And with that, we've now covered all of the weapon variations, the armor mods, our class tree selections, exotics, and seasonal artifact mods that have all combined to make this exceptionally powerful Night Stalker build that is absolutely perfect to take into Grandmasters during Season of the Wish. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the Gyrfalcon, Night Stalker Hunters, the Wishkeeper, Grandmasters so far this season, and anything else Destiny. So let me know down in the comments below. To make a copy of today's build, you can visit the Destiny Item Manager link that's included in the description. But otherwise, that's going to wrap things up for today's video on the Gyrfalcon Hauberk Night Stalker build. Thank you as always for checking out the video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then be sure to hit that like button below, along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated, and both really do help support the channel. If you're a new Light Guardian, just starting your journey, or a battle-hardened veteran, just looking for a new home, then be sure to check out the Discord link in the description below, and join one of the greatest communities in all of Destiny. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy holidays, and some happy hunting.